In Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song, this cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are stilled, when striving cease. My comforter, my all in all, here in the love of Christ I stand.
There in the ground his body lay, light of the world by darkness slain, then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again. And as he stands in victory, sin's curse has lost its grip on me, for I am his, and he is mine, bought with the precious blood of Christ. Oh, no guilt in life, no fear in death. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry to final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell, no scheme of man can ever pluck me from his hand, till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand. No guilt in life, no fear in death. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry to final breath, Jesus commands.
Always a good day.
Yeah, isn't it?
Thanks for that, Kim.
Flew somewhere, but when she came back, she was going to San Francisco. And just circled and circled for 3 or 4 hours. She was so foggy. And San Francisco.
Here we are.
San Francisco.
Jeff was trying to find work last weekend.
Just like,
Every time I get back, playing out this morning. Did you have it on? Oh, well, we stayed in Phoenix for 3 hours. Yeah, he's supposed to be. She didn't get them 5 hours. Last weekend,
I was at, we were at home.
I don't think she'd appreciate that after being shot. You're gonna die.
okay, we'll fill in a little bit of time until our minister shows up. First, everybody had a good Christmas? Anybody want to share a story? No, nobody? Okay. Well, we're here. We're vertical. That's part of it. I got a message from Raymond earlier about an hour ago. I guess Kathy Delmos is not doing, well, she's having a difficult time right now. So she was here last Saturday when we had our Christmas dinner, and I talked to her for a bit, and she looked okay. But I guess she's just feeling down the last couple of days. Keep Effie in mind. She fell that same night, fractured her pelvis. So that's got to be painful. And always, as always, Monty and Cheryl, they're still going through a bit. Cheryl's recovering from her surgery. Monty's still going through his treatments and medical appointments and stuff pretty much every day. Let's see here. Oh, okay. Haskell and Nancy, they're still going through issues. Joe's been staying home taking care of Kathy, which is probably, seems like a full-time job. Roy is going to try and make it here today. Roy Grace. I can't remember everybody. My mind's a fog right now. And then Jeff Johnson, his granddaughters, I guess, are going through some health issues. Respiratory infections, it says. Okay, and then as always, the first responders, our military people, police and fire. It's, speaking from experience, this is a really rough time of the year, this season, that police and fire go through so much issues. Unfortunately, a lot of them are family issues, because you get family together that haven't been around each other in quite a while, and then one or two words get spoken, and then there's some friction, and then it all starts over again. I had a guy, family hadn't gotten together for a while, so they got together Christmas. And it's usually slow for us, at least in the morning. I'm going down the street, probably about 10 in the morning, and all of a sudden this guy comes running out of the house. And he's got a white t-shirt on, and he's just drenched in blood. And I'm going, oh my goodness. Then a little bit, maybe 30 seconds later, this other guy comes running behind him, and he's got a meat cleaver in his hand. And he's covered in blood. And I'm going, oh man, I'm looking for a place to make a U-turn. I said, man, I can't get out of here. I'm going to have to deal with these people. So then about 30 seconds later, this woman comes running out, chasing after both of them. Long story short, what happened was, first guy is the boyfriend of the girl. He wanted a certain cut of the turkey that they were having. The girl didn't get it quick enough for him, so she slapped him. Brother did. Brother was the second guy. Brother didn't care for that, so he took the meat cleaver and hacked him, and then he goes running out. Well, then his sister sees that. She gets mad at the brother for cutting up her boyfriend, so she's after him with the big fork that they use, and she stabbed him. And they're all three running out. And I'm going, oh my goodness. It took me 2 or 3 hours to unravel all that. But that's the Christmas season for you. You know, goodwill and all that other stuff. So, anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. But just keep these people in mind, and, prayer's a powerful thing.
It's a good thing that part of your life is over with, right?
Most of it, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I got tons of stories I could tell, but this isn't the place for it. Does anybody else want to share anything about the holidays or these last few days? Jeff's back safely. That's good. He had a little bit of adventure up in the air. Continued prayers for Alan and Linda's son, that he starts getting better. That some of his choices have been a little, let's see, what's the word? Questionable, I guess, so to speak. Get him along on a better path. Anybody else? Robert?
God is
Okay.
great.
Jack? Oh, I'm sorry. Were you?
No,
Oh, I thought you were mumbling something.
I just said God is great.
Oh, okay. True. Jack? No? Okay. Alvin? Anybody? Denise? How about you, Jim? I heard you had some company last night.
I did think of one. Jennifer wanted me to let everybody know. She mentioned last week, I think, about her ex-father-in-law. Was in the hospital because of a brain surgery at pressure or something, and they had to operate on him. He had a stroke while he was on the operating table.
Mm-hmm.
He came out in a coma, and he's been in a coma all week. And turns out he had another stroke in the coma. And day before, it was Christmas Eve. Her oldest son keeps her informed, because it's his grandfather. Let her know that they had to take part of his brain out.
Mm-hmm.
So now he's still in there, and they don't know what's going to make it or
What's going to
or
happen
not.
next?
You know, he might come out, if he comes out of that coma, he might
What's
get
his name?
You know,
What's his name? I don't know if it's in here.
it's really hard.
Do you know his name?
His name is Glenn.
Glenn.
Yeah, Glenn Robertson.
Okay, no, I don't see his name in here.
But it's really hard. They treated her. She had a hard time when she was growing up because her stepfather that lived with was an alcoholic and treated her really bad. And so this family, who turned out to be her, in-laws was taking her in and out a lot, taking care of her like a daughter, because they loved her. So she's having a hard time with it, you know, which is understandable.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, that happens way too often, and I've seen way too much of it, you know.
Yeah.
Then the kids start acting up when they're like preteen or teenagers. And then come to find out, after going back to the same house a couple of times, I'll go, wait a minute, everything's not really this kid's fault, like mom or dad says it is, you know? So then I'd get on the parent's case. Well, he has to listen to me because I'm the parent. I go, well, why don't you treat him the way, or her the way they should be? You know, they're not little doormats or, you know, people that, you know, you want to do your bidding. You know, it works both ways. But okay, anyone else? I'm guessing your dad's is he on his way? Okay. Okay, no one else? Okay, we'll let Anthony play one or two hymns while we wait. Okay, that's about all I have.
Hopefully for sure. Our son and grandson have gotten several compliments already this morning.
Yeah.
With them,
I remember those days, you get up in the next morning all sore.
and I try to get my poor grandson switches. I thought they were all coming, but then I want to get ready. So after I went home, you guys had a whole meeting, I'm like, okay. Yes. Hopefully they'll come with me. There you go. How long is she been on this?
There's always two.
Minimum amount of time without having to research. I'm not doing 3 months, I think.
Some of the people here, they make it so hot. Have some friends at home with me. We need she will, for God's video. Of course, they said I would, but I'm. That's the one that says I'm good to go somewhere.
I'm here. What do you need?
Yeah.
I need you to look up Matthew 20, verses 1 through 16. This is just one of the many parables that Jesus spoke about. And this one is called the parable of the workers in the vineyard, which I don't know how many are familiar with that. Matthew 20, verses 1 through 16. So, can you read it?
Yep. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire men to work in his vineyard.
them, you also go and work in my vineyard, and I will pay you whatever is right. So they went. He went out again about the 6th hour and the 9th hour and did the same thing. About the 11th hour, he went out and found still others standing around. He asked them, "Why have you been standing here all day long doing nothing?" "Because no one has hired us," they answered. He said to them, "You also go and work in my vineyard." When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Call the workers and pay them their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going on to the first." The workers who were hired about the 11th hour came and each received a denarius. So when those came who were hired first, they expected to receive more. But each one of them also received a denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. "These men who were hired last worked only 1 hour," they said, "and you have paid them equal to us who have borne the burden of the work in the heat of the day." But he answered one of them, "Friend, I'm not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for a denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the man who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last."
Okay, from what Robert just read, is this all about some field workers, basically?
All about what?
Field workers.
Field workers.
Laborers.
Yeah, laborers,
The
yeah.
guys doing the work in the, well, in California, that's what we call them, field workers.
Field workers, okay.
Okay. Well, the people that go out and, do the crops and stuff like that. Is this just a good story about them working?
Yep, that's all it is.
Okay, just for that. Just for
It's a
that.
parable, right? So heavenly meaning, earthly story with a heavenly meaning.
Okay, about field workers?
About workers in general.
Kind of what we're referred to.
Okay, any workers, okay.
Any workers and any owner.
Okay. Now, according to the parable, there was probably at least 3, 4, 5 different groups of workers hired at different times during the day. All were paid an agreed upon wage. Now, does that seem kind of fair or unfair or what?
That's fair.
It's fair?
Yeah, it's fair, they agreed upon it.
Okay, they agreed to it.
Right.
Okay. Now, when it came time to get paid, and then, well, back in those days, according to the law of Moses, the workers, regardless of whatever job they were doing, it was customary, they got paid at the end of the day.
Right.
So, not like us where you work for a week or 2 weeks and then you get paid. So they got paid at the end of every day. What the reasoning for that is, I don't know. But the point is, there was several different groups of workers.
I'm just going to go about the reasoning. The work then was different than the work now. The work now is quote unquote consistent throughout. We have a system of working for extended periods of time and getting paid later on when the company makes enough money to be able to pay everybody.
Yeah, pretty much.
But it's different. It was different then. When somebody had a job to do, that was only a day job.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to get paid at the end of the day.
Okay. So when it came down to get paid, he started with the ones that got hired last.
Right.
So let's say the guy that he hired first, or the group that he hired first, let's say 8 in the morning, they agreed upon a salary,
Right.
worked all day,
Mm-hmm.
then there was periodically during the day he hired more people, but say the ones in the very last group only worked 1 or 2 hours, but yet they got paid the same wage, same salary as the ones that had been working all day.
Right.
So does that seem fair?
Yes, that's fair. It doesn't seem fair,
Yeah.
but it is fair because of the heavenly meaning.
And that's what they agreed upon.
Yeah. Well, that was the agreement.
Yeah,
So these workers are representative of who?
of us.
Yeah, of us. Okay. Now, the emphasis that I put on it is that, okay, using Jim as an example, and, you know, some of the more elderly folks that have been walking with the Lord for 40 or 50 years, okay? Living in, you know, a righteous life as much as they can and all that. And then we get a new convert that's maybe been a baptized Christian for 6 months or a year. Now, is the person that's been involved 40 or 50 years more deserving of the new guy that maybe didn't understand what was going on? And finally somebody took time to study with him, and he goes, okay, yeah, I get it. I want to be baptized. This is how I want to move on. Now, is he less deserving than the guy that's been, say, in practice for 50 years?
Of course not.
You know? So, I mean, he's just as deserving.
Sure.
But some people say, well, that's not fair. I've been doing this for 50 years. You know?
There's some people who are not knowledgeable enough about.
Yeah. Well, and you can kind of relate that just a little bit to whatever field of work you're in. Here you've been working for this company for 25 years, and then there's a guy that comes in that's been working maybe for 2 years, and he gets promoted over you.
Yep.
That doesn't happen, does it?
Oh.
You know, and then this other guy gets promoted over somebody that's been there 20 years. Well, that's not really fair. That part of it.
Maybe he's still more deserving.
What's that?
Maybe he's more deserving. Like we're talented or something.
Well, you're kind of missing the comparison there.
Well, it's.
You know, I mean, but it's true, he could be more deserving. But in the context of being a Christian, you have a new one, and a seasoned, well, I'm not going to say an older one, but a more mature one. How about that? You know.
I don't know, some of us are old and not mature.
And they both die at the same time.
Yeah.
And they both end up in heaven. You know.
That's the payment.
Well, that's
the payment. We don't deserve even that payment.
okay. Let's say you're the.
But that was agreed upon.
Let's say you're the new convert, the new person.
Yeah.
Okay, and you die after 6 months.
Right.
And you're up there with, you know, a guy that's been, you know, 40, 50 years.
And he's happy to see me.
And you see each other. Yeah, he should be.
He is.
Instead of looking at him and saying, well, what are you doing here? You haven't put in your time.
If he's not happy to see me, he doesn't need to be there.
Yeah.
Well, remember when Jeffrey Dahmer got saved in prison right before somebody killed him? Well, everybody was like, no, he can't go to heaven, he's a terrible person.
And I did a pretty in-depth study on that.
Yeah.
Does everybody know who Jeffrey Dahmer is?
Yeah, should.
When I worked for 25 years in a big, huge company, and new guys come in and they're making about as much or whatnot more, I would hear it from other people like me. How come they're getting paid so much when we had to work so many years to work our way up to this? And well, they say because the cost of living has gone up so much, they have to pay them so they can afford it. And so that was their reasoning. And I could understand that.
Well, on one point you can say, well, that's not fair. You know, I put in my time, especially in the workplace. Well, I put in my time. He didn't, but he's somebody's nephew.
The world has been
There you go.
to the.
Yeah, it's an
It's a
unfair.
whole different, it is a whole different.
Whole different concept.
It's an unfair comparison. But if you make it like a workplace thing, it's easier for people to understand. Jack?
We have to remember here, Jesus wasn't speaking to Christians. He was speaking to Jews. All right? And one of the things you do, what you're saying is true here about, you know, someone, for us it's true. I've been a Christian for 40 years and somebody else been a Christian for 40 minutes. Jesus returns, we're both going to get the same reward. We're both, we both have our inheritance in heaven. But in this case, another thing it could be is that Jesus is also preparing them for the Gentiles that are going to come in their minds at the end. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're only coming in now. Well, how could they possibly get the same? And you see that when Christianity starts, how some of the Jews say, well, you're not a real Christian unless you do what us Jews have been doing for 1,500 years.
And that's kind of like what Robert was saying just a couple minutes ago. You know, I mean, they're both equally deserving. And then the thing about Jeffrey Dahmer, I mean, he wasn't the greatest character in the world. But, and I forget the name of the minister that was studying with him. I know it was in Tennessee somewhere, but I can't remember which town it was in. But he did do some Bible studies with him and all that, and pretty much his eyes got open and said, okay, this is how I want to be from now on. And then he ends up getting killed by another inmate. Now.
Yeah, because he turned on his inmates.
Oh, you're just a funny guy, remember? No, but anyway, I mean, regardless of what we think, he's equally deserving. If he's honestly turned his life around and repented and got baptized, he's equally deserving, whether we agree with it or not, or what our opinion is of him or not. And I imagine there's going to be quite a surprise of who you're going to see up in heaven. And then on the flip side of the coin, who you're not going to see in heaven.
Well, we won't know that. Heaven is timeless, and
Yeah.
God has already said that He wouldn't take us to heaven and us have stress over not seeing our relatives. So we won't have to worry about that because we won't know.
Yeah.
We'll know the ones that we know are there, but the ones that we know that aren't there, we won't know.
True. And then I go back once in a while to Paul. To Paul. I refer to him myself as a serial killer, you know, before he got converted. And look how many deaths he was responsible for. Hundreds, if not thousands. And yet, when his eyes were opened, you know, look what happens. You know, we got one of the greatest men in the Bible, but it took something dramatic for him to get his eyes open. And if you go by the way he used to be, he's undeserving of being with God. You know, the way we think. But yet, you look later on in his life, everything that he did. Now, did that offset all the evil that he did? I mean, he still did do all that stuff, but he repented and corrected his life. So, you know, I kind of throw that in there, that, okay, well, we got a serial killer, a mass murderer that is up there too.
Well, you got pedophiles, you got all these other sinners who come to the Lord and are no longer doing what they were perhaps even known for. Okay? Does that make them less deserving of the one who's striven to live a righteous life and who's only fallen every now and then and only committed this little tiny sin and not this big sin? Well, to God,
there is no tiny sin or big sin.
well, that's what I'm saying.
You know,
That's exactly what I'm saying. So sin is sin is sin. So we were all, as the Bible has said, we were all there. We were all doing those things.
That's like people saying, well, it's just a little white lie. Well, it's still a lie.
The lie is not colored.
You know, it's not.
It has no color.
Do you want to say something?
These are, I mean, when Jesus is talking here, it starts out, I imagine you're in Matthew chapter 20, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So he says, for the kingdom of heaven is like. He's talking about kingdom principles. You know, Jack pointed out that yes, he's speaking to Jews, but he's talking about kingdom principles. And if you consider yourself a member of the church, you consider yourself part of the kingdom. And that's who he is addressing. Those who are part of the kingdom. He's saying this is what the kingdom is like. And when you get into the workers, I think there's a key word that are laborers. There's that key word for us to pick up on. Now, some may have joined at the beginning, earlier on. Some may have joined later on. But notice they all received some sort of wage, right? They received the same wage, they received the same reward, but one thing they all have in common is they were laboring or they were working.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't go into the field and do nothing. because they're going to receive exactly what their reward is for that too. He talks about paying those who work, who labor in the field. And so that goes back to who do we imagine we may see or expect to see in heaven, and whether there will be a surprise or not. And I agree with that. But I think the most value we can find in considering that question is, am I going to be there? Am I laboring in the field? Am I working in his field? And so that we're not mistaken, what is the field? That's a question. So what is the field?
It's our work.
It is our world.
Yeah.
So, not, everything that folks do here for the church is beneficial, and there's other scriptures to support that, and we need to be doing that. But what this passage is talking about is our labor and our working out in the field. So the question falls to me as a Christian is, am I laboring in that field? Am I working out there in the world? Am I trying to advance the kingdom of God in this world outside of these four walls? And if I'm not, I'm going to receive my payment or my reward for that as well.
Okay, and then taking it just a little step further, the landowner is representing who?
God.
God. So when these other workers are questioning, well, how come this guy gets this? How come he's getting just as much as me? You can drag it just a little bit further and, kind of ask yourself the question, well, who am I to question what God does?
Absolutely.
Who am I to question the decision that he makes? He could just as easily, when I sin, if I sin, that, hey, you know what? No, I never knew you. You could have been a 40-year Christian, but then you kind of stagnate or plateau out, and you say, well, I've done enough, I can coast now a little bit. But that's not the case. It's not over till it's over, regardless. I've had guys during work, literally, these are not very desirable citizens, let me put it that way. And they end up getting shot or stabbed, literally die while I'm right there. And the 4 or 5 that happened to me with, each one of them said, hey, am I going to go to heaven? Is God going to take me? Is he going to accept me? And darn well in the back of your mind the answer is no. Probably no. But that's, not for me to determine. And I would tell him, I just say, well, I don't know. That's up to God if he's going to accept me or not. But in the back of my own mind, it's like, no, you're going down to the smoking section. But I can't tell the guy that. As much as I felt like it.
Because we really
don't know, but more than likely they're not going. But that's neither here nor there. All I can do is try to be a comfort, until they die. That came out wrong, but until the point of death, knowing that they're not going to make it, I had a brother that had an issue, ended up in the hospital several times, and then the most recent time, he probably should have died, but he didn't. So I went to go see him, and we had a little conversation, and he just looked up right at me and says, well, how come I'm not dead? Shouldn't I be dead right now? I said, I don't know. That's not for me to determine or ask about. I says, maybe God has something that he wants you to do for him. And then he sat there, he was silent for a few seconds. He says, well, what is it you want me to do? I said, I don't know. I can't answer that. That's between you and God. And so he was thinking a little bit. And his life was not real, an exemplary life either. But I said, that's not for me to determine or make a decision on. I said, that's up to God. he may or may not have something for you to do. And he kept asking me, well, what is it? What does he want me to do? I said, I don't know, but if you get through this, you know, we can do a little more studying and work on that. So he got better, got released, went back home, and probably 2 weeks later he was gone because he went back to that same lifestyle and, you know, thought when he got released, I guess he was okay, so now I can go back to doing what I want to do, but that wasn't the case. So.
Well, it's none of our business who God decides about.
Well, it shouldn't be, but, you know, human nature being what it is, sometimes in the back of your mind, you gotta say, man, this, you know, this guy's hopeless, you know. I mean, I'll stand up here and admit I've been there and done that, you know. I deal with all these gang members and thugs and people like that, and then when the chips are really down and death looks imminent, it's like, well, what's gonna happen to me, you know? So, and depending who it was, sometimes you can just look at it and say, you know what, you're on your own, buddy. But, you know, you can't do that. You know, you gotta give a person a little bit of hope. But the case being, though, on this particular parable, it's, you know, the landowners are representative of God, the workers are the world, you know. This person A is probably deserving, the lifelong Christian person, but person B, who maybe just got baptized and repented and all that, and walks out from the baptistry and is on his way home and he gets hit by a truck, or he's going to fly back home and his plane crashes. Now, is he less deserving? No, I'd venture to say he's equally deserving. Sometimes we may, in our mind, you know, because we're only human, we may not agree with it or want to accept it. But that's just the way it is. God can do what he wants, and who are we to question his decisions? You know, so. Anything else? Jack, you look like you got something you want to say there. No?
I was scratching my ear actually, but.
Oh, okay.
But thinking about Jeffrey Dahmer, if the blood of Jesus is not capable of washing away his sins, we're wasting our time here.
Yeah.
Because it's not capable of washing ours away.
Well, like I said earlier, I'm not in agreement with all the stuff he did.
It's a horrible.
All the stuff he did, but you know what? When you're forgiven and you're baptized and all that,
That's gone.
you know, God just does this and say, okay, sin no more, basically. And I don't remember all that stuff. But we as humans, really, Jeffrey Dahmer? Are you kidding me?
Well, the example we're going to get to at some point in Ray's class is the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat.
Mm-hmm.
What was in the Ark of the Covenant? Examples of where Israel had rebelled against God, but that was covered up by the mercy, so God couldn't see that rebellion anymore. That's one of the things it represents. There's more to it than that, but that's one of them. So.
Well, you know, like I said, it's basically, hey, if you repent and all that, just move on. I don't remember that. All that's behind you, you know. But of course, some people backslide and things like that, but that's why we're here to help them over the rough parts. So, okay, any other comments?
Just a prayer request. So Kathy, Joe.
Yeah, we went over that.
Okay. And then Brian is currently, he's in rehab.
Brian. Oh, Brian. I thought you said Ryan.
And he has good days and he has bad days. And we've been keeping an eye on his dog, and there's going to be some things we want to do there to help him move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But keep him in your prayers. There's a variety of other people that just seem to kind of flood in this morning that are struggling with some things.
Yeah.
And again, I'd ask everybody, I'm happy if your holiday's going great. I really am. There's folks who aren't.
Yeah.
And some of it is kind of culminated over this weekend. You don't know who they are, but please be praying for them. There's a lot of you folks who are having.
And a lot of times the holidays, especially Christmas time, that makes people that are having issues, it compounds everything, you know. Devon?
The Sanchez that were here Wednesday, how did is he doing better?
As far as I know, they went over to your guys' house yesterday. I was Kirk yesterday.
Oh, Kurt was fine.
Okay.
I expected.
Yeah, when he left
Well, I didn't
class
think,
and
I know they said they were gonna be here for service. I assumed they were gonna be here for class, but that's not the case, I guess. But no, they were at the hospital till a little bit past midnight when they left here Wednesday. No, he came over, had lunch with us. He was joking around, acting goofy, and said he felt really good. You know, typical Kurt for those that know him. Said he'd be here today. But it's, you know, like I said a minute ago, especially during the holidays, Christmas time, some people are having issues, and it just seems to compound itself. But not to blame them, but it's like very few of them will be willing to reach out and say, hey, you know what, I'm really having a bad day today. I know Raymond got quite a few phone calls this morning from different people, and he's been talking to some people. But it's like, you know, Christmas time is supposed to be, you know, a time of family, a time of happiness and togetherness, enjoying all that. And for most people it is. But for the few that are having issues, it's